from Isaiah chapter 42. I'm going to reread it for you. For a long time I have kept silent. I have been quiet and held myself back. But now, like a woman in childbirth, I cry out, I gasp and pant. I will lay waste the mountains and hills and dry up all their vegetation. I will turn rivers into islands and dry up the pools. I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places smooth. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them. But those who trust in idols, who say to images, "You are our gods," will be turned back in utter shame. Hear, you deaf. Look, you blind, and see. Who is blind but my servant, and deaf like the messenger I sent? Who is blind like the one in covenant with me, blind like the servant of the Lord? You have seen many things, but you pay no attention. Your ears are open, but you do not listen. It pleased the Lord, for the sake of his righteousness, to make his law great and glorious. Grace and peace to you, my brothers and sisters. Your ear is only roughly the size of a Dorito, and yet with it you need it to listen to your favorite album, to relax to the sound of rushing water or a light, gentle breeze, not like the ones we have right now, and hear your spouse on your wedding day say, "I do," or "I will," and become your husband or wife. Your eyeball is just a little bit bigger probably than the tip of your thumb, but with it, you behold a sunrise or a painting or the face of your grandbaby. We often take these sensory organs for granted until they don't quite work the way they're supposed to. When the waitress comes with the check at the end of the meal and you can't read it all of a sudden. Or when the TV's on and you realize that you're needing to pump up that volume a lot louder than you are used to. That maybe those years of going to rock concerts and those hours behind the 50 cal have finally taken their toll. And when you're in these situations, it can be disorienting, it can be confusing, especially as it happens to you for the first time, when you realize, I can't read this, or I can't understand what they're saying. And you look around you and you look for someone to help, and you ask, "Here, can you read this? What does this say?" Or you grab the remote and you turn up the volume, or you turn on subtitles, or you turn toward whoever you're sitting with and say, what are they talking about on the TV? Because it feels distressing when the sensory organs you have taken for granted for so long, your eyes and your ears, suddenly aren't doing what they're supposed to. It can even cause a little bit of anxiety. But you know what's a little strange? Is we have even deeper questions, right? Questions not just like, what does this say on this receipt, but what is this saying in the Word? I understand the words, but the meaning isn't getting home to me. Or I'm hearing things about God and about the world, but I understand the words that I'm hearing, but I'm not grasping the significance. Or even deeper than that, questions like, why? Why is this happening before me? Why did that person have to die so soon? Why is this particular struggle so powerful over me, gets me every single time? Why doesn't God do this or do that? Why I pray and pray and pray for the same thing, and I think it's a good thing to pray for. Why hasn't God given it to me? Is there a sensory organ we can blame for those questions? For that confusion? For that level of disorientation? But what's weird about us, about you and me, is if our eyes don't work or our ears aren't working the way that they're supposed to, we look around and we ask for help. When you can't read the receipt for your meal, you don't assume that the meal was free just because you can't read it and you walk out of the restaurant. If you can't hear what somebody is saying to you, you don't assume that they said nothing or that the person doesn't exist. But you know what happens when our faith sensory organs go wrong is we don't question us, we question God. What sense does that make? We think because we're having a hard time seeing God's rationale for doing this or that to us, that maybe he doesn't exist. Maybe he's not strong enough to help us. Maybe he doesn't want to help us. We conclude things about God instead of turning our sight on ourselves. It doesn't make sense. Because we're trying to do theology. We're trying to draw conclusions about who God is and what he does based on how we feel. And maybe, if you're tracking where I'm going with this, maybe already your defenses are going up and you're saying, great, here's another Lutheran pastor about to rail against us for our emotions. Feelings are bad. We've heard this one before, Pastor, but that's not what we're saying. Emotions are not automatically bad. In fact, emotions serve a purpose. Your feelings have a place in your life. Oftentimes, your anger tells you what's important to you. What you feel like is threatened. Doesn't mean it's good to feel that way. It just tells you something. Sometimes your sadness tells you what you are grieving, what you wish could be true about your life, but isn't true. Sometimes your joy, your happiness, your feelings of hope tells you what is being satisfied, what you prioritize. That's great. Your feelings are great at telling you about you. They tell you what you need to know, but they're not great at telling you about God. Using your feelings, your grief, your pain, your joy, your peace, to tell you about who God is, to start there and then conclude about God, that's not how you figure out who God is. It's like using your nose to try to see. That's like using your ear to try to taste. That's like using your eyes to try to hear. It's the wrong organ. It's the wrong tool for the job. But you know the tragic thing, the offensive thing, the scary thing, is we don't have the right organs to perceive who God is. We lost those. Those hit the cutting room floor as soon as Adam and Eve sinned, as soon as the human race was plunged into sin. And now, even though we inherit our dad's eyes or our mom's hair, we don't inherit what we need to perceive God correctly. We don't have it. We are born blind. Spiritually blind, unable to see God. And it's true that God leaves evidence for us in creation. He leaves marks of his character in creation. He leaves a mark of his character on our hearts through the natural knowledge of his law and our conscience. It's true that God leaves us a little bit, but it's also true that we are so blind that we even have a good habit of ignoring the evidence that those things say. We are not good at seeing God, and we're not great at seeking him out either. And this is offensive to people like you and me who kind of pride ourselves on being able to see things, read books, take in the information, put it into practice, see the road signs, take the correct exit, or hear what somebody is saying, orders, or the tweet of a whistle, and stop playing basketball. We're good at taking in physical sensory information and using it. Spiritual stuff, we don't have a clue. But we think we do. God says, look, you blind people, it seems to you, because of how you feel, that I'm powerless, that I don't care, and that as far as what you're going through, as far as the questions that you have, that I don't have an answer, that I'm silent. And God understands that feeling. God understands that the silence to you can feel absolutely deafening, but it wouldn't be right to conclude, to assume these things about him. He wants to speak to you in your blindness. He says, look, I have kept silent for a long time, but I'm not going to forever. He says, I am not able to anymore. I'm going to be like a woman in childbirth. I'm going to cry out, I gasp and pant, he says it through Isaiah. And you probably are aware, this is one of God's favorite metaphors for when something good is on its way. It's like a pregnancy. And at the end of the pregnancy, a baby bursts forth into the world, and it's joyous and it's wonderful. God loves to use this metaphor for stuff he's going to do. It's coming. It's going to come. But here, he adds the detail. It's going to be loud. You're going to hear it. Just like if you're in that delivery room, you're going to hear some stuff. God says, it feels like I'm silent right now, but there's no way I can keep silent forever. It feels like I'm not answering your prayers, God says, but I'm not going to leave you without an answer forever. My grace, my power, my love is on its way. God is not able to stay silent forever because of his love. His love demands that he answer your suffering. His love demands that he speak to your questions. His love demands that he answers your prayers. So any feeling that we have, any emotion we have that God's taking a long time or that God is ignoring us is actually a lie, not based on the truth. God says, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay waste the mountains and hills and dry up their vegetation. I'm going to turn the rivers into islands and dry up the pools. Remember, God is the one who created the heavens and the earth. Sometimes we forget that about the guy we pray to and worship. And later on, he's going to chide Israel. He calls Israel in the latter half of this lesson, my servant. Because God had called Israel together as a nation for service. To serve him and to be his people, but to serve the nations around them. God called Israel to serve a purpose, to show God's glory and his love and his grace to the nations around them, but the Israelites forgot that purpose. It was only a matter of time before they devolved into the same sex and power-hungry stuff that every other nation does, before they started taking advantage of each other, and they even worshiped some idols along the way because of their weakness and their lack of sight. God says, why didn't you just remember the stuff I did for you? Why didn't you just remember all the times I answered the promises I gave to your forefathers? And he says, all you need to do is look at the history of my love. Start at creation. Start when God formed the snow-capped mountains and the Everglades and the deep ocean and the arid desert. That's what God did with purely the breath of his word. And if he wanted to, he could lay waste to it and do it all over again, and do it all over again 1,000 times. In fact, God's creation, and you're a part of it, stay within his control. It has never snuck out from his power. He remains in power. So we can take those thoughts, those assumptions that God is incapable of helping me, that God is incapable of doing anything in my life. We can crumple those up and throw those away, because this is the Creator speaking. He says, I cannot stay silent for long. I'm going to come to help you. I'm going to marshal my power and my strength, and I'm going to meet you in your blindness. He says the powerful, amazing, miraculous thing he's going to do, he's going to take you by the hand. He's going to lead you. If you've ever had trouble seeing, if you've ever had a blindfold on, somebody's taking you to a surprise party or something like that, it's kind of an anxious moment, isn't it? Whenever you're relying on someone to take you somewhere, you are trusting them quite a bit. And if you're allowing this to happen, it's because it's someone you find trustworthy, probably. A blind person being led by someone else, probably trust them not to lead them off of a cliff or into danger. That's what faith essentially is. It's trusting that where God takes you, he's going to be with you. He says, I'm going to take you on paths you have not known. I'm going to take you places where you're going to be confused. You're going to be troubled. You haven't seen this before. I'm going to take you to unfamiliar places, but he says, I will not forsake you. He says, this pathway is going to be rocky. This pathway is going to be dangerous. But what I'm going to do, God says, is I will transform the rocky places, the rough places, into smooth pathways. I will lead you on paths of righteousness for my own name's sake, he says in Psalm 23. I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to transform darkness into light, because this is your God of power. He's also your God of love. See, you and I lack the organs we need to perceive God correctly, so he tells us what we need to know. He places that knowledge into our minds and hearts. He takes us by the hand, and he leads us. And he invites us. He says, but those who trust in idols, who say to images, you are our gods, will be turned back in utter shame. He invites you to test it out. Because before, when we were complaining about God, when we were relying on how we feel to define our relationship with God, if we would have given in, to those temptations to forsake God because he's not making us feel the way we want to feel or giving us exactly what we want and exactly the way we want it, God says, what other options do you have? What else would you rely on? And where would that end you up? God invites you to consider the outcome of who you place your trust in. God says, I'm the only creator of the universe. I'm the only God who you can owe your life to. That means that when I say I'm going to take very good care of you and bring you into a good future, that you can trust me. The reason why you can trust him is because of the way he's used his power for you. Because he's guaranteed his power to you. He's guaranteed his love to you. Just like he covenanted himself to the nation of Israel, he has covenanted himself to you through the person and work of Jesus Christ, who came into the darkness of humankind's sin and shone the light of God's truth and grace, who came into the darkness of your own heart and your blindness and caused you to see how wonderful and loving God is, to tell you and to show you things you could have never figured out on your own, but Jesus gifted you the knowledge and the gift of sight. So now you know the one who has you by the hand loves you with an eternal, gracious love. The one who is guiding you on this pathway of your life, who also surrounds you with his forgiving grace. And you know that the one who has you by the hand eventually is going to take you to be with him in paradise, through whatever valley of darkness, whatever valley of the shadow of death you go through. So what that does to our questions when we say, why did God let this happen? Why is this happening around me? Why am I suffering? Why am I tempted? Well, God does give an answer to those questions. We feel like God is silent all the time, but that feeling isn't exactly true. It's just that God might not give us direct answers to those questions. He doesn't tell us, well, I did this in your life because I was going to do X, Y, Z. But he does give us his power and his love to trust in. That might seem maybe condescending when you have burning questions for God and he says, just trust me, I love you. Just trust me, I love you. Remember that God is guiding you by the hand. He's not pushing you from behind. He doesn't demand that you figure out where you're going and I'm going to be right behind you the whole way. No, he's guiding you and leading you. And when you're really in trouble, when you're really in distress, and when you're really freaking out, do you need someone to explain your life to you? No, sometimes you just need someone to embrace you, someone to tell you they love you, someone to tell you it's going to be okay. That's what God is saying to you. That's what God is speaking to you over and over through the person and work of Jesus Christ. Through the gospel, he says, I've got you. Don't worry about this. It is going to be okay. See, God brings you back to your senses. And I realize that's a little bit misleading, because it implies that we had senses at one point, we lost it, God gives us back. But God gives us the sense that we never had in the first place. He puts in your heart something that you didn't have, but now you do through the gift of faith. He puts in your heart the ability to see him as he is, to behold him with the eyes not in your skull, but in your faith, to be able to see that he is a God of grace, and that he never will stop being a God of grace, that he is a God of power, and that he will never stop being a God of power, that he is a God who leads you, guides you, loves you, protects you, and he will never stop being that kind of God for you. That's the sense that God has restored in your heart. Amen.